Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. Michael, Kris, Florian. Going to get some different angles, I'm sure, on the conversation that we're going to be focusing on, which is around AI agents. Huge amount has been written. I mean, AI came into, I think lots of people have been using AI, we know, came into the main social sphere, shall we say, when everyone heard about ChatGPT and everyone kind of launched into that. This year seems to have been all about AI agents, and so we thought it would be useful to get together three people who know actually what they're talking about in that space. So let's kick this off, and maybe let's set the scene a little bit. And Michael, if I can come to you first and foremost. So what is an AI agent? Let's kind of set the scene. It's all written about what is an AI agent. Start us off there, please.
So, people are very confused as to what AI agents are because there's this thing called intelligent automations.
Okay.
And a lot of people think if you have an intelligent automation, that's an AI agent. And so I'll first start with, what is an intelligent automation? So an intelligent automation is trigger based. Something happens and then it makes something happen. So there's a trigger and then there's an action. And that's how these automations are set. So it's sort of like if then, but the actions might be empowered by like an AI language model.
Okay.
So because they have that language model component in there, people are saying that these automations are agents. So that's one of the things that's confusing. So to me, what an AI agent is, it is separate from automations, which are all action based. Agents are all goal based. So these are, for lack of a better way to describe them, digital entities that have goals and they're autonomous. Whereas with intelligent workflows, you can have the human sort of in the loop, sort of guiding the edge cases, and kind of when it fails. With the AI agents, the humans are sort of like on the side. They can just see what's happened after the fact. They can't sort of interdict as it's going. So they're autonomous. They are essentially self-learning. They're goal-oriented. And so in a nutshell, that's sort of what they are. So they are little digital entities that are created to achieve something, and that's what they do. They figure it out. They break tasks down until they can figure out the appropriate steps, and then they take the necessary actions.
Got you. Okay. And when you talk about goal orientated, so if I take a step back, so intelligent automation, you said kind of triggers so if X happens, do Y kind of thing. Is that right? Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay. Kris, Florian, anything to add into?
I would maybe add also a distinction between AI agents and LLMs, because it's a very common also misinformation where LLMs are not really agents, and that's very important to notice. So when you're using GPT, or if you're using a chat connected to things like large language models like GPT, it's not really an agent. And like Michael said, the agents are intelligent and the agents are task performing, and the agents are making decisions of their own, depending how they were set. And also what is important is that within our environment that we're working with, providing travel data to different companies, there never is one agent applied. There's always a set of various different agents who have independent tasks that cooperate between each other. So that's probably I could add.
Makes sense, Florian?
Yeah, I think for the initial definition and then comparison, I think this was already quite detailed, and not too much to add at this stage.
Perfect. Okay. Now, the reason we've got you three guys on here is because, from my understanding, so this agent, it's a bit of coding. A bit of coding is maybe an understating it, obviously, but it needs data to do something with. and it needs a platform that it can utilize to access.
It actually can do a lot more.
Go on.
So taking the data and using the data is one component, but it could be plugged into various different APIs, and it can perform the tasks that you are programming it for, the goals that you are programming it for. So you can connect it to Slack, you can connect it to email, you can connect it to any other API that has a functionality of its own, and it can direct and control all the process for all of that workflow process, depending on what the goal is. So data is one component, probably the major one, but it's one of the components of the agents.
Just maybe to add on top of that, I think it always also depends in what context we're looking at it, right? But of course, also agents can even go a step further, that they have that human-like behavior, that they don't, in a lot of scenarios anymore, necessarily need an API to connect, but can actually browse a website as well and make a reservation via a booking engine. So this is also something which maybe not from an operations perspective or from the hotel or operator perspective is the classic thing, but when we look at it from more that agent on the guest side, you can suddenly have your own agent to reserve your trip, and can actually not necessarily have to connect to the classical inventory channels, but the agent can go on 5 different websites of hotels and just book via their website. So this is also something which I think is quite significant in a change of traditional integrations and connectivity to what AI agents can do nowadays.
I'll just pick up on that point quickly. I read something, Google have recently had a conference, and they were talking about AI mode, which is something they're introducing. I only glanced it quickly, but it gave the impression that that's something along the lines of what you were talking about, Florian, that literally it's evolving that whole traveler experience using, now whether it's AI agents, this is what I don't know, which is why I'm getting you guys on to try and explain it to me. But I read that that's a very different way that people are going to be potentially exploring, finding, and then booking their travel.
Yeah, it's that agent to agent communication which they are enabling as one of the points. Because at the end of the day, we also need to be clear that it's not like one agent which is going to solve all of your pain points, right? It's going to be multiple agents focusing on specific areas and specific tasks. And with Google wanting to support it agent to agent, you can then have that travel agent which then connects with a different agent to actually make a booking, or and then that they can collaborate with one another, and you can therefore simplify access to a lot. I think this is definitely a very important strategy move from Google on this level.
This is just such an interesting space, because I guess our hoteliers are also thinking about how they're going to be driving people to come and book with them. So this is important to understand this direction of travel.
So I've used OpenAI's Operator to book a trip, and I believe Google's version is now called Mariner. I think that's the name of their sort of computer use. But I think that it depends on the type of trip. So I think if it's a business trip where I just need to find some place that is inexpensive, a good rating, close to where I want to go to, I'm comfortable with sending my agent to go ahead and book that trip. And invariably, it goes to Expedia. So that's a direct channel killer right there.
Right.
But if I'm booking a trip for my family, and part of the best part of a trip is the planning phase. So I don't think that people are going to be using them for the leisure where they're kind of like getting inspired. They might use the AI to help get inspired, but I think the whole booking process is part of the journey, is part of the trip. So I don't think people will offload that piece per se, but I think business travel, more transactional type of trips where you just got to do it, I think they'll use that, where you don't really care where you stay. Well, at least to me, that's how I think. So I think business travel, group travel probably will be automated And I think leisure travel to an extent won't.
Kris, what's your kind of take on
Well,
this?
well, that's very interesting. So I wonder what all the travel management companies now think. Are they going to be gone or not? But I was thinking about it from a completely different angle. If you have an agent making phone calls or making bookings for you, and they call a hotel where there's another agent that is programmed to pick up these inquiries, and therefore you have two agents discussing about your vacation or your business trip, and where does that end? How do you know they will actually make the right decisions for you? It's kind of like weird until it becomes normal, I think.
It's interesting because it kind of goes back to what commerce used to be. It used to be one-to-one, and you pay the price that you want to pay that they feel that they can maximize from you. So the seller versus the person going. But now how our systems are set up, prices are set at scale. So everyone kind of gets the same price, but I might be willing to pay more or less versus someone else. So when you have these one-to-one agents, you actually can kind of get to that exact price point. So in theory, hotels will be able to yield more with this one-to-one process. So I think with Kris, with what you're talking about there, when they having the sort of finagling between these agents, they're trying to figure out what exactly is the best price point, and that will make the person book, and then just do it.
So if we've got all these things are going out, and we know that out in the real world, there are a lot of people trying to be deceptive, do these things currently have guardrails or anything around it that helps to identify that the source of where it's going is a legitimate source? And when it's making a booking, it isn't somebody that's just set up a site that has agents that will be found that will take a booking, and suddenly you're paying for a room or something, and it doesn't actually exist.
Well, in the Google I/O conference, they talked about one of the ways that you're found is through authoritative signals.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're using these agents or whatever, in theory, if they're showing up, Google has deemed them to be authoritative, credible site. So you can always kind of go to like the dark web, and you probably would get ripped off.
Yeah.
But I think that that's sort of like where they kind of take care of you a little bit. Like things that bubble up, you might be paying a little bit more for those things. You might not be getting the best deal, but you know that is probably true.
Okay. Anyone else want to comment?
I think there's again a couple of angles here, because from what you're saying, Michael, that means that all the LLM type of activity and searches is going to lead to a point where global companies will support global companies, because it will create this fear that somebody may use generative marketing and create dummy pages, etc., in order to pop up in LLMs. But eventually, Expedia will be the only one to trust, type of thing, which kind of puts middle and small hoteliers in question mark position. And the other angle is exactly that. I think that the agents are not really to be trustable fully, because now if the hotels are making generative marketing where they create websites that would say top 10 hotels at the seaside in this city, and they just fake it so that the LLMs can read that, then that kind of creates the position where trustability, I think, is something that you have to be reserved to, I guess. Obviously, Expedia is Expedia, but it's only Expedia and Booking.com that will be in the game.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, and I think definitely it's not kind of the death of the OTAs in the first step, because they have that distribution, but as well as operators being able to make your inventory directly accessible to agents and make sure that you have the right infrastructure there. This will maybe also in the future break certain barriers of the large OTAs and their position in controlling positions in the market. So I think, as you say, a very interesting part will be that how can you trust? What are the signals of trust? And will these be controlled by players like Google and pushing other global companies? or will it actually be more on, historical data and maybe other factors which will deem them trustworthy sources? But I think this will be a very important part, that security / trust element.
Let's draw it back to hotel operational side for a minute, because that's where we see a lot written from the traveler perspective, which we've just explored. I'm really interested to sit there and think, right, if I'm a hotelier, I'm having to think about this externally as to how the traveler is finding me. But if I park that for a moment, I'm sitting there, I'm probably, as we're getting into the summer, contemplating I might need to invest in some new technology. I hear all this thing about talking about the hotel tech stack and how I got to put this all together. And I'm like, well, maybe I don't need to do that. Maybe I just need a good source of data, good platform, and I can get these agents to come and do this job. I could get someone to program me a bunch of agents. And why do I need to have all these different pieces of technology that talk through an API when this seems to be the new direction to be traveling? Is that a logical? I mean, I guess that's a logical thought. Is it feasible? Is it a question that hoteliers should be considering?
I think it's a very important question which you're raising, is what is the role of traditional business software, and how will these solutions evolve, and especially in the hotel tech stack, with a lot of legacy systems still controlling a majority of the tech stacks, at least from the big chains. I think there will need to be a huge shift. However, not too long ago, I was at the CIO summit where a lot of CIOs were saying, we don't expect AI to have too much of a fundamental change because we're so locked in the short term with our current technology. But when we look at how will this evolve, and you can say, okay, what should I do today? We definitely believe, or I myself believe that based on the last 20 minutes of our conversation, we see how fast things are evolving, right? We see as well that there's not one dominating player where it's 100% clear that this player will be leading the innovation in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time, but not think about like 12 months to 24 months. And so we don't believe that there's also one SaaS provider which can just then incorporate the right LLM and offer their own AI-driven functionalities or own agents to support the hotel's need short-term and long-term. So for us, the recommendation is always invest in an open infrastructure and have key systems which are fully API first, which are fully not just API first anymore, but actually going the step further and thinking about becoming AI first. It's like, how do you not just support integrations from apps, but how do you support the best AI agent integrations to these core systems? And maybe these software solutions become more system of records, which focus in hotels on everything which is legal compliance, which is complex enough and which will not go away in the short term. If you've ever operated a property management system in Italy or other countries, you will definitely know that. And then you'll have maybe more agents on top connecting also between each other and with the system of records. So I think the tech stack will change significantly, and we see these first trends already today.
Kris?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what where my point is as Florian's. But I can just add one more thing, that there's a whole lot of hotels out there with the legacy softwares that is even before APIs, where you don't even get an API. So we're talking about agentification that will replace API, but I think majority of the hotels in numbers statistically would be in that old tech stack environment. And for those hotels, that will be a very big challenge of what do they do, because it's either a full investment in new technologies like Florian's, or they remain in the 90s. So that was going to be a challenging point for them. And as a data provider, I realized that as well. I used to divide companies into big international companies where they have a proper infrastructure. All they need is a raw data because they already have their own BI revenue distribution solutions. And then there are companies smaller and medium where they don't have that infrastructure and they do need some additional solutions to process the data. Today, it's the companies that can process agent from an LLM AI perspective the data, and those who cannot, and not necessarily all the big ones are the ones that can process it.
So you're actually segmenting based on their technology and their ability to, the type of technology they have and their ability to utilize that, irrespective of whether they're a major brand or a smaller group or independent. Interesting.
Exactly. Okay. So the bigs and small are no longer bigs and small because sometimes the bigs will have an old legacy technology basis. Very difficult to change and upgrade.
What you exactly said, Kris, on big and small is not any more clear. I think with this already, with open APIs and apps and all of that, the playing field got a bit more leveled between like enterprise players and smaller players of being able to use cutting edge technology. But now with that next step, it's actually become even more a level playing field, and a lot of smaller operators actually now have the advantage of not having such a huge architecture to maintain, but can transition much faster into becoming AI first, or at least leverage agent ecosystem to support their business needs. So I think at the same time, it gives an amazing kind of a tooling at a very different cost structure for the small operators to compete with the large enterprise, and where 10, 20 years ago was a complete different ball game.
Exactly.
Michael?
Yeah, and I think, I agree with the guy saying, but I think you also have to think about when you're talking about, what happens to the tech stack. I think you also have to think about people and demographics and how people book. So I worked at a company where 50% of people were walk-ins. So you have to have a system that front desk person can check them in or something like that. Then you still have a certain demographic that likes to call. So you need to have a phone system, whether it's a call center or maybe it's an AI voice agent or whatever that's going to be. Then you're going to have a demographic that was so used to booking on websites. So you're going to still need your website for that particular group. And then and all the systems that support those as well. Then you have people that like their emails. So you're going to need a system that sends out emails, whether that's an agent, a CRM system. You have people that want to get texted. And then you're going to have people that just want stuff pushed to them. So you're going to have all these different types of people. So I think the tech stack, to the point that's talked about, it needs to be integrated in AI first and open and have a lot of plugins to APIs. But I think that you have to kind of think about the guest journey and how people book and what people like, and you just can't remove stuff. And so you just need to kind of build upon it and kind of bring it together.
And is that typically something that happens, that people get caught up in the new shiny thing and actually forget at the end of the day that what you're there to do is you're there to get guests to book with you and to stay with you and to make their experience through the whole journey a pleasant and easy experience? And if we focus our attention too much, we might kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater.
100%. Like, there's so many times that people say email is dead. Email is, no one's going to be booking on email, but email consistently is the most profitable channel for hotels. So, I mean, collecting first party data, so important. How are you going to collect first party data? Are people going to give the first party data to this agent? Maybe what the future is, I give my information to my AI agent to kind of figure out what is the best deal, but I tell it, don't share it. So then how do hotels contact me? I mean, there's going to be a lot of interesting challenges in the future. And then I was reading today about Google now is coming up with a way to, when you sign up for newsletters or you do certain things, you don't give them your primary email. You kind of give them this sort of like ancillary sort of dummy email. So it's not your real email. So it's, so how are hotels going to stay in touch?
Yeah, and I think it's a very interesting topic. And the whole self-sovereign identity topic in an agent-first world, I think also becomes more and more relevant. And what to your point, Michael, I totally agree with you. It's not about just take everything out and you just have one agent there. And it's also in some areas it makes sense to still have clear business software and integrating with it, but you need to be more modular in that sense. That I don't believe one vendor can cover everything and having not the ability to switch things out. So I think really moving in a direction of being able to exchange things and being like, where do I need maybe just a small agent, or where do I want a real tool, which a strong CRM, which has all of these different possibilities. What I also want to say just on that note is, yes, we should always have that business goal in mind. And every technology you invest in and implement in, there should always be that ROI, company goal, guest and staff in mind. However, I also really urge a topic of risk of inactivity. It's at the moment, we are not necessarily in all areas already there to see clear ROIs on AI investments. Doesn't mean now spend like huge amount of money and exchange your core systems, but make sure that you start thinking about it and start trying it out, because there you'll suddenly start actually realizing a lot of use cases which will come as an epiphany. And I think especially hotel groups which pre-budget, for example, now a budget season and the second part of the year starting, there needs to be a AI budget in there, maybe without clear project outcomes yet, because they maybe will not know yet what happens in Q2, Q3 in terms of AI innovation at that time that it becomes relevant. But they need to make sure that they are not budget constrained of saying we can't do anything about it. And this is a change of mindset in a budgeting season, which you typically don't have, because typically you only budget something where you can actually plan a tangible return. So I think that risk of inactivity is not something which hotel operators can neglect it anymore.
I think what you, Michael and Florian, are saying could be summarized like the characteristic of a current time, where you have technology revolution every year or every 2 years. Now, we probably had the same conversation a couple of years ago on Internet of Things, how this is going to affect the customer journey. Then we had virtual reality and how this was going to be the future of customer journey, reservations, etc. Now we are on agents and LLMs. And to your point, Michael, yes, the traditional channels will remain the same, because we don't know what else is going to come in the next year. And to your point, Florian, if hotels are not doing anything, they are missing out much more than they used to 10 years ago. 10 years ago, when the revolution was every 10 years, they wouldn't miss anything within the 10 years, right? But now if the revolution is every year or two, you're missing out the era. So that budgeting thing, that should be an ongoing real-time planning, and not once per year as it usually is.
That makes sense. Just want to, conscious of your time, so just want to ask another question here, which is related to, I'm going to pick up a word that's been used by you guys in this conversation, trust. And by trust, I mean that what the agent is going to do is what you want it to do, because what it's interpreting is clean and accurate. And by that, I'm talking, we deal with a lot of technology providers who are our partners, and they spend a lot of time when they're pulling the data into their solutions, making sure it's clean, making sure it's accurate, because if their system is going to do something with it, it needs to be right. So if we're suddenly looking here at, okay, so we have a platform, we can bolt the agents on top, we've got this single source of data, let's say, there feels like a risk of these agents going rogue or hallucinating or doing all kinds of stuff. That to me would seem another potential barrier that is going to need to be overcome for it to really be effective on the operational side. What's your kind of take on that?
Well, the thing is, so in terms of hallucinations, the way to minimize the hallucinations is to really focus these agents to do one thing, with the goal on one thing. Because if you give them too much to do or too broad of a scope, that is when things get into trouble. But if you kind of keep a focus on a certain thing and you give it all the information it needs to do that certain thing, same way you would do an employee. If you just think of these things as an employee, give them all the information that an employee would need and all the common sense that an employee would need, and you say, this is your area, and if you have any problems, reach out to me. And then there's the trust but verify. Then you trust it to the extent that you have to audit it and assess it to make sure it's constantly. I mean, the problems are going to be once you kind of have confidence in these things, then you kind of fall asleep at the switch. I think that's when real problems happen. But I think that's going to be the jobs of people in the future, the humans in the loop, where you are pretty much the supervisor of these things, making sure that they're doing the right thing, and sort of like almost like a George Jetson job, where you just kind of constantly look and say, okay, is that right? Is that right? Okay, it's good. It's good. It's good. That's what I think.
Kris?
Yes, well, the trick here is not in using or deploying the agents, but actually creating a whole work frame of agents that can be trusted, where it is not about just using them because that's simple. It's about the design, the architecture that Michael is describing, where each agent does specific job, and therefore you eliminate the hallucinations. So that kind of work framing and that architecture is valuable. That's where the trick is, to make it work without hallucination and trustable.
I couldn't agree more than what Michael and Kris were just saying. And I think, first step, just think about agents as your employees. You also don't want to have jack of all trades in your company. You specialize them so that they can be good at what they're doing. It's the same how you run a company. And the second point is, it's going to be humans checking if the agents are doing the right job. And then in the second step, you might have agents checking on other agents if they are actually controlling the right stuff and reporting back. And so you'll also have reporting layers there. But you can really just think about it as additional staff in your teams and in your company, just needing a different set of management skills and focus.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which is very interesting, Trevor. Sorry, just to point out.
No, go for it.
Because what we're saying is that humans will be overlooking that agentification frameworks. But at the same time, in the Global Revenue Forum we've met in London end of last year, we were saying that people are very bad in making decisions. And that if LLMs and if AI would have had the same access to information as humans, they would definitely make better decisions. Just to throw in kind of a philosophical approach to that.
So someone checking that the agent is making the best decision, but without bias.
Well, someone who, if humans are pretty bad at making decisions, so you have a human making bad decisions, overlooking agents if they make good decisions. Kind of,
Well, they say the best decision output is not just human or not just AI, it is human plus AI. Mm-hmm. That is actually, in terms of coming up with the best decisions, that's actually, they did, I don't know which company did a test on that, but they said that that kind of combination yields the best results every time.
Interesting. Right. I've said it twice already, but I am very conscious of your time, and I've kept you guys longer than I expected. So we'll wrap it up there. But I didn't quite expect we'd touch on so many different breadths of what this might be. But hopefully that's been of interest and at least got some thought going. And maybe there's some areas in there that we can explore and come back to and dig a bit deeper. But thanks again for your time. It's much appreciated.